infrastructure and whether it can or cannot really advance a circular economy model and really advance kind of the value addedness of looking at materials as a commodity, and frankly some of the mistakes and challenges that is going on in the United States. And how many people think that composting infrastructure is the thing that you should always invest in? Well, I'm going to blow your mind, okay? So it really goes back to, well, how do you come to that conclusion? You know, do you come to that conclusion from doing a life cycle analysis? Do you come to that conclusion from doing a life cycle costing analysis? So composting is a legitimate technology once you've exhausted the hierarchies. The US EPA has a hierarchy which first talks about minimizing waste in the first instance. You know, and then when you cannot minimize waste in the first instance, then you want to divert the materials for its intended use. So in the food context, you want to minimize food loss in the whole food system, and then you want to look at diverting, for example, food to food banks, food to animals, and then look at composting infrastructure. So one of the mistakes that I continuously, frankly, see in the U.S. is a quick purchase of composting without investing in the investment. Sometimes it's education, sometimes it's investment in the supply chain to reduce food loss to the greatest extent that you can higher up in the hierarchy, higher up in the supply chain. So some of the tools that are emerging is being able to provide easy to use life cycle costing analysis for local municipal decision makers to be able to make those more informed choices, looking at life cycle costing and life cycle consequences. The related issue is one of the real challenges in the U.S. is the fact that earlier yesterday we talked about segregation and the challenges of segregating waste in India. From a recycling markets perspective, that continues to be the challenge in the United States. There's been a trend in the United States from the perspective of, driven by local municipal budgets, combined collection. While there is a centralized collection of recycled materials, you collect glass, you collect plastics, you collect metals together, which from a volume perspective, it has worked. But when you talk to the professionals in the industry, particularly glass, has had the effect of really destroying the recycling infrastructure. And from a value perspective, there's an emerging thought that you actually should go back to segregating particularly metals and plastics, which have the far more greater value than you do of glass. When we talk about kind of this emerging idea of how do you really maximize the value of materials for business to business and for re-engineering of those materials, but I think really carefully about infrastructure choices. So New York City, I fought New York City very hard, who advanced investment in recycling infrastructure locally, which had both social issues, but it didn't really look at how do we maximize recovery materials, and they basically constrained themselves to a 20-year contract. Well, this is not my presentation, so I don't know. So the bottom line in terms of municipal infrastructure is really providing the tools, life cycle costing tools, life cycle analysis, to make those informed decisions. And some things like composting and recycling, which may on its surface in isolation may be viewed as a good infrastructure, really in the world of circular economy, we should really look at, well, what kind of materials are we going to capture? What is the benefit of capturing that materials? And should we, in fact, is it the goal of the collection to maximize the total volume of materials? Or should we build a system that looks at the back-end value of materials? Should we build a system that looks at the differential in values of metals and plastic versus glass in terms of making those decisions? There's an emerging thought that we should not actually collect glass as a recycled commodity because of the low price of glass, the destruction of infrastructure, and we should just focus on plastics and metals. That being said, there's a whole culture in the United States of glass as being this great thing to have. So in the United States, we still have not gotten over this issue, this psychology of capturing glass is the great thing. So we do need to have some hard conversation if we truly want to advance kind of a circular economy model, a value creation model. I don't know how much time I have, but I will touch on one other innovation that's happening in the United States, and it's also a few other countries in the world. It's the idea of creating a materials marketplace. And the idea is to create business-to-business transactions, off-spec materials like metals, solvents, chemical solvents, and create transactions to directly go to, as a feedstock, to another company to use those as an input feedstock. So currently we have, even in the United States and elsewhere, you tend to have those materials enter into and be classified as waste, and they put into, in the United States, a cradle-to-grave system, and so you're not really able to create this business-to-business transaction. So the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development has created an open platform, open source platform, to be able to have businesses connect their off-spec materials, be it metals, be it plastics, be it solvents, as a commodity to feedstock, input feedstock, to other industries. And we're testing this out in 6 states and 6 companies to test this out. Some of the largest companies in the world, like 3M, to really test this. Now, we are running up against this issue of the historic regulatory program, well-intended regulatory program in the United States, the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, and in particular the cradle-to-grave system that existed in the United States. And so this is a system that's built out for all legitimate reasons, right? We had waste that created contaminated soils. We had waste that caused air pollution issues. So we had a manifest system, so everyone that touched waste has to register themselves and has to document point to point. All well intended, right? But now we want to look at the circular economy, the solution to create business-to-business transactions. So we're running up against this well-intended regulatory system that actually is impeding these business-to-business transactions. So what we're going to be testing out in the combination of the digital platform to accommodate this kind of circular model and see where we can modify these well-intended regulatory systems while preserving the public health protections, but while accommodating the business transaction, really maximize the value creation. And one of the real impediments of this cradle-to-grave system is transportation, right? So the cradle-to-grave system actually pushes you to have multiple transportation steps in the way. So what we're trying to do is skip 1 or 2 of the transportation steps and create a direct transfer of materials from the business that produces off-spec material directly to a business that would use that as a feedstock for its intended purpose of producing whatever product that they choose. So I will, shall I go on or should I? Okay. Well, probably the last, I could go on and on, but I will touch on 2 other things. So I actually oversaw the reconstruction of the largest wastewater pollution control plant in New York City, actually in the United States. And I'll just touch on a few innovations that have emerged there. One is the use of biodigesters, but also capturing the methane to drive electricity production, to drive the electricity needs at a power plant. So that were tried at a pilot phase at this one water pollution control plant. It's been expanded throughout the United States to really have this cycle of using effective biodigestion, capturing the methane, creating electricity to provide part of their needs. But the interesting thing that happened at this water pollution control plant, there's also the worst water pollution control plant in the entire United States until the reconstruction. The communities had the worst odor problem. So not only did it create a closed loop system, but the community said, we want this to be an artistic go-to place for our community. So this got converted from a problem. If you go to New York City, it's right on the Brooklyn waterfront. One of the top architects in the world actually created a tremendous architecture feature, created a nature walk. This has become a destination point for visitors. The other component that's been built into the system is to deal with the challenge of many members of the community are not understanding the purpose and the functionality of a water pollution control plan. So there's a visitor center, so schools now visit the water pollution control plan, and they're taken through, you know, the very simple process of water pollution control plan, so they can relate what goes on at this mega facility to how their life and their responsibility and their contribution to being part of the solution instead of part of the problem. So, do I still have one more? Am I done? Okay, I'm done now. Thank you very much.